Regarding drones, a few weeks ago, I instructed the establishment of a special project to counter the drone threat, and already today, a progress report on the matter will be presented to me. It will take time, but we are on it. We will continue to ensure Israel's superiority in all arenas. This is a short, plain declaration from the desk of Israel's prime minister, a sentence that ties together policy urgency and a public pledge. As of early May 2026, Benjamin Netanyahu is serving as Israel's prime minister, and over the past months, his government has signaled a determined focus on threats that no longer arrive only on the ground or in the skies, but in the small, cheap, and hard-to-control domain of unmanned aircraft. The phrase he used, announcing a specially ordered project to counter the drone threat and saying a progress report would be presented already today, pins a moment of decision. It is an admission that the problem exists, a procedural step because the prime minister Terror has directed a program and a timing signal because he asked for and expected a report. He capped the remark by conceding the work will take time while promising that Israel will continue to secure its superiority across all arenas. Those three beats, order, oversight, and long-term intent, are the spine of the public message. To understand why this matters, we need to unpack two things at once: what the drone threat looks like today in Israel's region and what it means when a government elevates a countermeasure program to the prime ministerial level. Over the last several years, and with a marked acceleration since large-scale hostilities in 2023 and the fighting that followed in the region, armed groups have made drones central to their tactics. Hezbollah, operating from southern Lebanon, has deployed both reconnaissance and armed drones to probe Israeli positions, to attempt strikes on military targets, and to spread uncertainty among units stationed near the border. Iran and its allies have supplied increasingly capable aerial systems, some simple and cheap, others larger, longer ranged, and harder to detect. Drones change the tempo of warfare. They can be launched quickly in large numbers and from multiple dispersed locations. A swarm of small quadcopters is difficult for conventional air defenses to track and defeat. Larger unmanned aerial systems can carry munitions significant enough to destroy vehicles, to strike logistical hubs, or to create casualties among troops and civilians. And the proliferation of commercially available components lowers the barrier to entry for non-state actors. Taken together, these changes place a premium on detection, electronic resilience, and fast decision-making. They also force militaries to invest in layered responses, from jamming and cyber warfare to kinetic interception and hardened tactics on the ground. When a national leader instructs the creation of a special project to counter a threat, a usual levy means pulling together multiple strands of capability: intelligence and operational analysis, procurement and rapid acquisition, research and domestic industry, training and doctrine, and legal political guidance on use of force near contested front lines of the Americas. In Israel's case, those strands intersect with an active domestic defense industry that has long produced sensors, interceptors, and countermeasures. They also intersect with alliances and foreign procurement. In recent months, the government has discussed purchases and the expansion of air capabilities alongside domestic production initiatives. The prime minister's language about continuing to ensure Israel's superiority in all arenas points to an approach that is both technical and strategic, not only to stop individual drones, but to sustain a margin of deterrence and operational freedom. There are immediate operational pressures that help explain the tone of the statement. Israeli forces operating near the Lebanese border must contend with ambiguity on a daily basis. Are incoming aerial objects surveillance tools, loitering munitions, or decoys? Are they launched from deep within Lebanon or from smaller teams close to the border? What is their intended target? A forward base, an armored column, a critical node? And how quickly must commanders respond? Each of these questions demands sensors, fast intelligence fusion, and rules of engagement that manage risk without unnecessarily escalating. The prime minister's instruction reflects an attempt to unify that response, to set priorities, and to give commanders the tools to act with confidence. But organizing a response does not end the political problem. Any escalation against assets inside Lebanon carries the risk of broader conflict, and the Israeli government has, in public statements and private channels, balanced kinetic operations with diplomatic efforts. In April and the weeks that followed, there were public reports of Israeli moves toward direct talks with Lebanese counterparts and renewed attention to preventing a full-scale confrontation across the northern border. That diplomatic thread runs alongside the military one. A project that seeks to neutralize drone threats must be precise, technically effective, and careful to avoid reactions that would provide an adversary with a pretext for wider retaliation. Technically, counter-drone programs are eclectic. They range from high-end radar and electro-optical sensors that can spot small signatures at greater distance, to electronic warfare suites that jam control frequencies or GPS signals, to directed energy systems under development that can disable multiple targets quickly. They also involve software, automated target classification, warning networks for defenders and civilians, and training simulators that let troops practice responses to swarms. Israel has capabilities at each layer, and the government's public line about investing in local production underscores a desire to own the supply chain to make systems and munitions domestically, so that critical gear is not constrained by overseas suppliers or political hesitations. The practical daily reality on the ground, though, is not solved by equipment alone. Soldiers must adapt tactics, dispersed units need resilient communications, and civilian communications in border areas require alerts and preparation. The psychological strain of repeated drone alarms and the occasional strike is real. It erodes confidence and pushes political pressure onto governments. That dynamic helps explain the public nature of the Prime Minister's remark. Signaling activity reassures a domestic audience that something is being done, while signaling resolve to adversaries that the state is not standing still. The timing detail in the sentence is worth noting. He said the project was ordered a few weeks ago, and that already today a progress report would be presented. Process matters in defense. An initial report often contains assessments of the threat, a roster of actors involved, a plan of acquisition or research priorities, timelines and budget estimates, and recommended operational milestones. It does not mean the problem is solved, but it does impose a rhythm of accountability. The commander-in-chief asks for a briefing, and the machine of state responds. The leader's admission, this will take time, is realistic. Countering an adaptive threat like unmanned systems requires iterative testing, procurement cycles, integration of sensors and shooters, and training. None of that happens overnight. There is also the matter of doctrine and legal framework. Using electronic measures against small aerial platforms can be less escalatory than kinetic strikes, but jamming and denial techniques can spill over, affecting commercial aviation or civilian communications if not carefully applied. Kinetic responses inside another country's territory present legal and diplomatic complications, so a special project coordinate the operational with the legal and the diplomatic. That coordination is part of why such programs are elevated to top-level supervision. Israel's defense posture in recent years has been shaped by a combination of deterrence and initiative, maintaining sufficient power to deter adversaries, and when necessary, taking limited targeted action to neutralize specific threats. The Prime Minister's commitment to maintain superiority in all arenas signals an intent to continue that posture, to blend air power, cyber and intelligence, and a domestic industrial base to stay ahead of threats. It is a long-term posture. That is what a program-level project implies, not only short-term fixes, but investments in doctrine, industrial capacity, and training that should last years. A broader regional lens makes this local initiative consequential. Drones are a technology that sits at the intersection of state and non-state power projection. Iran's proliferation of aerial capabilities to proxies across the region and the transfer of know-how among allied groups has reshaped the battlefield. For Israel, that means threats can appear from the south, from the north, and from more distant theaters. The public emphasis on all arenas is therefore a recognition that any defense must be multidirectional, flexible, and scalable. At the same time, the appointment of a project and the expectation of a report are signals to international partners. Israel's allies, including the United States and several European states, track technological developments in the region closely. They weigh requests for intelligence sharing, technology transfers, and procurement support against political considerations. An explicit national program can make cooperation smoother by presenting clear priorities and by showing that Israel intends to shoulder part of the technical and financial burden of a response. There are risks built into the project's promise. Overpromising can raise expectation, as that equipment and doctrine will quickly neutralize a complex and adaptive threat. Under-delivering can create political backlash, particularly among populations near the front lines who feel vulnerable and impatient. The Prime Minister's line admitting time will be needed seeks to manage those expectations. Yet it also raises a testable promise, a program that is demonstrably making progress with visible improvements in detection, interception rates, and civilian protection will buy political capital. The audience for that capital is both domestic and regional. For the soldiers and technical personnel charged with this work, the brief is precise and unglamorous. Shorten decision loops, improve detection fidelity, prepare layered responses, and ensure redundancy. For defense industry engineers and managers, the task is to translate operational needs into reliable systems with short production cycles. For legal advisors and diplomats, the task is to craft rules and messages that A, allow decisive action while minimizing escalation. The Prime Minister's instruction consolidates that work under a political mandate. Whether the mandate produces faster procurement, better integration, or smarter doctrine will unfold in the months that follow. Finally, the rhetorical closing of the quoted sentence, a promise that Israel will preserve its superiority, is as much about deterrence as it is about morale. National leaders use such language to reassure citizens and to shape adversary calculations. Superiority is not a static state. It is a continuous effort to stay ahead across sensors, munitions, training, and resilience. The Prime Minister's public framing of the new project makes it clear that this effort now explicitly includes countering the unmanned aerial threat. In the coming weeks and months, listeners and viewers should look for tangible markers of progress, announcements of new procurement contracts, demonstrations of electronic warfare systems, deployment of SEN. Soar arrays along critical sectors and revise operational guidelines for units in contested zones. They should also watch for diplomatic signals, whether negotiations with Lebanon proceed, whether escalation is contained, and how partners coordinate on shared concerns about proliferation and airspace security. The Prime Minister ordered the project. His office expected a briefing. He cautioned patience and renewed a commitment to maintain an edge. Those are political and operational realities that now guide a range of institutions, the military, defense industry, intelligence services, and the ministries that connect force to law and diplomacy. This is a technological and strategic moment, a reminder that modern threats require integrated answers, that small, inexpensive tools can create outsized disruption, and that national security in the 21st century increasingly hinges on the speed with which states can detect, decide, and act. For Israeli citizens near contested borders, citizens near contested borders, for soldiers on watch, and for those who make and supply the tools of defense, the Prime Minister's words were both an instruction and a timeline. They set in motion a program whose early progress will be judged not only by reports shown in the Prime Minister's office, but by fewer alarms at night, fewer successful strikes, and a sense that the state can adapt and stay ahead in a battlefield that is changing faster than any single generation expected.